Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. So today we're going to be discussing my fusion plan for getting Masahiro the Bell Monk, the latest Fragment summon champion in the game. So we've been asking for it for what seems like years, but the pure Shadowkin reviver is finally here. No conditions about killing a target and all this other stuff. It is a pure revive. I guess Kinigashi technically exists, but she's an epic. So the first legendary fusion, more specifically, reviver for the Shadowkin faction. So let's first dive into his kit. But yeah, definitely, off the top, kind of worth getting just by that metric alone. But I digress. So Masahiro is a legendary Force Affinity HP based champion who can probably do a little bit of damage, but he's definitely more suited built like a support champion, as we'll see when we go through his kit. Base stats are pretty solid, relatively high HP as you'd expect. He's HP based, speed 109, so pretty quick, and he also has the extra 20 accuracy. You probably do want to build him with some accuracy, maybe some resistance, we'll talk about that later, and defense is respectable, but he's definitely biased towards the HP. So starting off on the A1, 75% chance when booked of placing the big version of decreased crit rate, which is, I guess, kind of a nice to have, but notably, AoE on the A1 means that he's good in sets that do things. So stun set, toxic set, provoke set, stuff like that, anything that can be a little bit of CC because he has an AoE on the A1. On the A2, this is a pretty solid ability, and it's just kind of a new take on, just not having every reviver be the standard full cleanse, block debuffs, etc. But before attacking, has a 100% chance when booked of transferring all debuffs from all allies to the target. So this is a full cleanse of your entire team, and it's a debuff transfer to the target who you attack. Plus, it also heals all allies by 25% of his max HP, so that scales really well, of course, with his base HP and whatever stats you put on him, plus a 25% strengthen on all allies, meaning you take less damage after this goes. So it is effectively a full cleanse, but you're not protected by block debuffs, but still good enough in a lot of instances just to purge your team of anything that might be on there. Good for like the dragon dungeon, for example. If you have got a bunch of poisons on you, you can take them all, throw them back on the dragon with this on a 3-turn cooldown. But of course, the bread and butter ability, the kind of his calling card as far as why he might be of interest or should be of interest to majority people, is this A3 here on a 4-turn cooldown when booked. AoE attack here that is a full revive before attacking, revives everyone with 50% turn meter in HP, and then he can also use this if there are no dead allies, which I always say is bad for auto runs, but generally speaking, this could be good just kind of running him on manual like faction wars or other things where you kind of want to take control. When booked, has a 100% chance of placing an AoE stun on a 4-turn cooldown plus block buffs for 2 turns. If the target is a boss, he will instead place decreased speed over the stun, because generally speaking, most bosses cannot be stunned, at least in the current iteration of the game. I'm wondering if they're going to add that in some sort of mechanic where you stun a boss in the future, just kind of like a Fire Knight Hard, where you can freeze them, and then one of the bosses in the Curse City you can technically freeze. Make him lose his turns, but that'd be interesting. The mechanic is stunnable boss, but I digress. Yeah, so decreased speed, block buffs if you're targeting bosses, which is again solid in debuffs, but if they're targeting waves or any other champions in the game, then it's an AoE stun with block buffs after that. So really solid ability, but don't forget this is also an AoE attack, so you can definitely get rid of total guard stacks if you're thinking more of arena context, or it can just be a good revive into a CC. And technically, he's not protecting your team, your allies with anything. There's no damage mitigation, there's no protection, but you could argue that he's protecting the team by stunning everyone else on the enemy wave, so they can't do anything for their turn when they get it. So really solid ability, and it is a nice revive. Again, the only downside here, I guess maybe 4-turn cooldown, but I think that's reasonable given how powerful it is just to use as an ability. But he will use this and potentially waste it on auto when no one is dead, so you got to be careful a little bit with that. On the passive here, as long as you keep taking turns, then you just take less damage up to the weak version of Strengthen, 15%, which is kind of great. And then they'll reset when the champions die or between rounds when you're transitioning between waves, for example. But nonetheless, as long as you keep taking turns, you'll just be tankier. Sweet. Awesome thing. And then whenever he revives people with his abilities, you're basically immune to CC. Sheep will bypass it, polymorph and whatnot. But most standard CCs, they're just going to be immune until they take their turn. So you could argue that, you assume, if he weak hits on someone when he revives them and it doesn't land the stun, or if there's some other way that someone else gets a turn before then, you can't be CC'd immediately before you take your turn, which is just kind of a nice bonus. So yeah, to me, this guy is awesome. I think he's like get A flat, A plus, A minus, somewhere in there. I guess A, just on average. But yeah, he's super solid, great kit. He can cleanse your team, protect them, and heal them. So he's a healer of sorts. He's also an AoE stun champion, so he's a little bit of CC. Plus, he's also a reviver. And then again, you can run him in a stun set if you wanted to double down with the AoE on the A1. So just really, really solid all-around support. Good for faction wars and any other restrictive content going forward. So given all my praise, you could definitely assume that I am going to be going for this guy, but of course that doesn't mean all that much, because for those who know, I go for every single fusion and fragment summon, so it doesn't really matter if they're good or bad. But nonetheless, I do think this guy is amazing. So if you do also want to go for him, let's hop into my lovely spreadsheet and we can talk about the events you're going to have to complete to get this guy on your account. Now, this spreadsheet will be linked in the description box down below if you'd like to check out a copy for yourself. And for anyone who's unfamiliar, this is the fusion plan spreadsheet, which just kind of lays out the milestones for each of the events or tournaments for each of the fusions, and once we have all the events live in the game, or at least once they release the calendar for the fusion. And yeah, so we have all the events and tournaments in terms of this. We have a pretty standard par for the course fragment summon here. So the 4 dungeon split, the 4 core dungeons. There's no event dungeon open right now, although I do expect that will be opening relatively soon, just not part of this particular fusion. So just, stay tuned for that. I have no info on that, but I just think, it's been a few months, so we're probably going to get the newest iteration of the event dungeon within the next month or two. 2 classic arena tournaments, champion training tournament going on right now, champion chase next weekend, 2 gear hunters events, 3 gear enhancements, and then a champion training event, and then a summon rush. So of course this is a fragment summon, but the first thing that jumped out to me when I was doing all the numbers here was that there's actually 115 fragments up for grabs. And you might note that the champion chase has 15 fragments, ignoring the +10 for winning, because most of us won't win the champion chase tournament, and the summon rush has 20. So there is an opportunity here where you can kind of pick and choose which summoning event you want to prioritize, if not focus on entirely. You could max out the entirety of the summon rush and just skip the champion chase, whatever it happens to be. I'm guessing it's 2x voids, just because we had 2x sacreds for Mavara, and then we just had 2x ancients this past weekend. And so I think we're next is 2x voids, just following the standard cycle, but who knows what they're going to do in the future here. But yeah, you could skip the entirety of the champion chase, or you could do the champion chase and only get 5 fragments from the summon rush. You kind of get to pick and choose your strategy there. The only other thing I like to highlight is what I call pinch points, which is the overlap between champion training and a core dungeon tournament. And so you can see we're starting off with champion training overlapping with the entirety of Spider, a little bit of Fire Knight, and then near the end of the fusion, champion training will overlap with the entirety of Ice Golem and a little bit of Dragon. So these are just moments you have to consider how you're apportioning your energy appropriately between the 2 simultaneous events. Now, for anyone who's unfamiliar with the spreadsheet, over here on the right hand side, we do have all of the milestones for each of the events and tournaments. Anything marked with an asterisk is a predicted value based off historical precedent for what events have looked like in the past, and then anything with parentheses is populated by values for things that I have done for certain events. So as an example, for the Mavara fusion, you can see how much silver I spent on each of the gear enhancements and what types of shards I pulled, if any, for these shard summoning events. So you can see here that my prediction is that we're going to do some sacreds and some mystery shards, and then probably some voids for the champion chase. Now, in more recent months / years, I guess at this point, I do what it's called mysteries for Maud, meaning that I kind of min-max the lower milestone in the summon rush and then go for the upper milestone with mystery shards. So, we'll see once the event goes live tomorrow what these numbers actually are in the event, but these are just my predictions. And so you could obviously just pull sacreds or voids or ancients or whatever just to go all the way out to the higher milestone, but that's just not how I typically play the game. I'm more of a min-maxer. But the point here is that my plan is to do both shard events because I'm going for all 115 other fragments. I'll get the champion at 100, and then I'll use the extra 15 towards Maud. And side note, I only have 38 fragments for Maud, so it's been a very, very long and slow grind towards getting her. But let me know how many fragments you have accumulated for her thus far, or if you're one of the lucky people that skips a lot of fragments summons and you already have her already, let me know that as well. The last thing that I mentioned is down here we have my overall energy plan. This is not a prescription for how you should spend your energy, but this is just noting how I plan to spend my energy for each day of the fusion. And typically when there's 2 of them, I prioritize champion training, and then I come out back and focus on the dungeon tournament, just because champion training running campaigns a little bit more intensive. Hopping back in the game, let's talk about some current events going on in the game right now. But of course, we always start with my standard spiel about taking a snapshot of my supply count at the beginning of a fusion, because I do like to summarize minimize the amount of supplies I spent over the course of a fusion, because like I said, I do every fusion, and so it just hopefully helps you guys get an idea of what it actually costs to do fusions when you're in the end game, despite being free to play. So stay tuned for the end of the fusion. I'll be posting a post, or I'll be putting a post on my community tab page summarizing the deltas of all of my supplies. So we'll start the bidding here at 428 million silver. That's where I was this morning. Of course, the fusion started hours ago, at least at the time of this recording, and so I've accumulated some silver since then. And gems, I want to call it like 49.50. I've gotten a bit more over the course of the day, just from daily login rewards and whatnot. So starting off with the events, we have the Gear Hunters #1 already live, and it's a pretty standard milestone, 3 days long and a 3700 target. And thankfully, when it is overlapping between champion training and a dungeon, it is usually relatively easy to get, at least for me, to get all the way out to 3700 in the course of the 3 days. So that should be very, very doable. We have the Summon Rush starting tomorrow, as we talked about, and so hopefully we have a relatively achievable low milestone, and then the higher milestone is not too far away from that, just so it's a little bit more tenable to do with a bunch of mystery shards. Again, that is my plan. And then we also have a gear enhancement starting tomorrow. Those are pretty standard. I put in the spreadsheet a budget of 25 million, but you can see if you scroll down, most of the time I'm usually somewhere between, I want to say 16 and 22 million silver. Just depends on the RNG of what I'm leveling and where I'm kind of focusing my efforts. In terms of the tournaments, Spider is already live. That's a pretty standard milestone at the 2250, so nothing unexpected there. You just run the dungeon, and then you kind of go from there. And then the champion training tournament as well. Now, typically, or the rule I've tried to establish for myself is that I don't really chase legendary tomes if I'm above 100, which I currently am at the moment. But because I'm enticed to go for the 6-star mythical chaos ore, and I'm going to be at 10,000 anyways, I also want the 7/10 of a promise shard as well. The last 2,000 is kind of an easy once you're already there. But if I could stop at 6,800, that would be a lot nicer. I'm already halfway there. But since I'm going to go out to 10,000 just because I want those rewards, I might as well get the extra tome out there at the 12k. So I'm probably going to max this out fully as well. So yeah, that's kind of my going in plan. Maxed out the champion training, which will give me a decent amount of dungeon divers credit, while also simultaneously working on the spider tournament, which will give me the rest, hopefully, of the dungeon divers credit. And then that will kind of round up the beginning, so to speak, of the fusion. And then of course, whatever milestones we have in the Summon Rush will be the focus over the weekend. So yeah, that's going to do it for my fusion plan for Masahiro. Let me know your thoughts on the champion in the comment section down below. I did talk about this on my streams. I do stream on weekends at 10 a.m. Pacific time if you do want to hang out on Twitch and or YouTube. But my prediction is that the next 2 fusions are going to be fragment summons, so that now everyone has 3 fusion tokens, assuming you did the last 2 plus the portion of the Titan event. Then you're not going to be able to redeem it for like 3 more months. That's kind of my cynical tinfoil hat theory, but it would be funny. But for you guys' sake, who are kind of looking for your Fabian or your Newt, hopefully the next fusion is one where you can actually redeem these tokens and kind of swap it out. But then again, it also has to be someone you'd be willing to sacrifice for said champion that you might want. But maybe, let me know in the comment section down below. Are you just going to trade the next fusion in no matter if they're good or not? Or do you want to kind of see if it's a good fusion that you want to keep and not want to sacrifice for later? So let me know what your guys' strategy is going forward. As always, if you did find this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below. It really does help out the channel. And feel free to hit the subscribe button down below as well, if and only if you're enjoying the content overall on this channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching and have a good one.